Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to our podcast, Beyond the Yellow Tape. We have a special guest for our podcast today with me and Julian. So, why don't you take it over and introduce a special guest for the podcast?
All right. Our special guest today is the head of the graduate program, the Forensic Science program at John Jay College, the college I graduated from. And she's definitely one of the reasons I graduated the program in the first place. So I'd like to introduce you guys to Dr. Prinz. Dr. Prinz, if there was an audience, there'd be a big applause right now. So me and Dr. Prinz go all the way back to 2017, which is only a couple years ago. And you were the teacher for my thesis research class. And in that class, you pretty much helped students, you guided students through figuring out and determining their research thesis projects, which is a 2-year or about a year-long experiment that the students do, that I have to do myself. And I guess, how do I say this? Where the students were proving their own skills and they had to use what they learned in the program to develop these develop their research. Is that the best way I would describe the thesis research?
Yeah, I do believe that having done thesis research, people really grow. I know there's a lot of coursework and a lot of laboratory classes that are part of different forensic science programs, but this research component like turns it up a notch, where you have to generate your own data, you have to be very critical and also be, much more called resilient, because not everything works. So you have just keep going, and it proves that you are, self-disciplined enough to complete a project, and it really teaches you how to deal with data, how to draw conclusions, which then helps if you ever do casework. That is very important.
Which is true. It definitely proved that I was somewhat resilient, because I had like maybe 3 projects planned in mind and they all kind of fell through. And then when I finally got one to stick, we probably had to go through 10 different starting points to actually get things working. And then once we finally got things working, you find out that you have to troubleshoot instruments and that you have to troubleshoot your game plan as well as a whole, because you got like, what's the word I'm looking for? You're kind of just under the thumb of the instruments in a sense. So if that's working in a specific way, then you kind of have to alter the research to how everything, you pretty much got to take it. You got to pretty much take what life gives you as to however it happens.
I mean, it's definitely an exercise that teaches you a lot. And that I feel it's an important component in a forensic science program.
Right.
It's hard to teach though. So Julian, you said you were in that class, in the thesis research class. It is really hard because people have different work habits. So we try to go through some research design and a lot of writing, because writing is very important and it's an important skill to have, but it is very hard to teach. But students need to find the time to complete their thesis research, and afterwards they're always very proud. So you should be proud of yourself. That you
I am. I'm definitely very happy, very excited that I got that accomplished. I got 3 books like published because I want to let people know that I had something published. So believe I was very, very happy about that. And as for Dr. Prinz, everyone who does, everyone listening, she's also a teacher at molecular biology for the forensics grad program at John Jay. And Nidhi is also big in the mobile community. So I'll let you guys hash it out about some of these big DNA topics that kind of blow my mind. All these alleles and genes that I know nothing of, honestly.
Hey, Julian, you got to read up on it.
I'm trying.
No, because it's not isolated anymore. I mean, if you are at a crime scene, you need to know all the different options you have for the different types of evidence. And so you need to be able to decide what is going to be the more probative if you have to destroy one type of evidence to test the other. So
yeah, that's definitely something I deal with in the lab I work at right now, because we're always trying to figure out if some things are destructive. So we always have like a person from DNA come in and tell us if they come in and tell us if the sample would be destructive, and if so, they say the steps would be like a XYZ, and let us know if we have to consume the whole sample.
no, I mean, the field everything is getting so complicated, and all the criminalists have to be proficiency tested in the specific tests they do. So everybody's getting more and more specialized, but you still need that generalist overview for case triaging and for evidence processing. Absolutely.
Which is really nice. Then that's the interesting part about forensic, different fields, how they come together, whether the crime scene, like its blood spatter, its traces, its DNA, its serology, like the amalgamation of forensic science, and different crime scenes offer different things, I'm sure, but it's just like you mentioned, the understanding how to connect the evidence, what not to connect, the importance of it, so that you don't destroy the evidence, which is important, not only DNA, but like fingerprints is now like secondary transfer. So a big thing, actually, considering that you have been in the field for so long. So how would you see that, seeing the DNA analysis has changed over the time? And considering its inception to now, like even going from for single cell, but now there is NGS. It's out there. So what, according to you, is the greatest challenge that you have seen, or something that you really look forward to be an improvement in the field of DNA analysis, according to you?
I mean, you're absolutely right. It changed a lot. DNA casework used to require quite a bit of evidence. You needed basically a body fluid. But then it's already, I guess, over. In 1997, there was a paper about DNA from fingerprints, and that caused this expansion of DNA testing to touched objects, and thus into property crimes, minor crimes, not homicides and sexual assaults anymore, where you would expect a body fluid, but also for example, property crimes, where you now can test burglary tools or clothing left behind. And so the sensitivity increased a lot, and then more markers were combined, so the power of discrimination increased. So now you have a really, really, really strong DNA match to something that may not be probative, because it may be a contact trace that is transfer, a passive transfer rather than active transfer. So the decision of, is it really probative, is a question now. And it's a big challenge, especially if you have an item like a gun that has been shared between multiple suspects. So then you have a DNA mixture. So how do you explain, or how do you actually connect any one person to that gun? So, and what does it mean? Does it mean they were at the crime scene, or did it mean they were just storing the gun in their house at some point? So the interpretation is more complicated because the testing is more sensitive.
Right.
And items are now being tested that are less directly associated with the crime.
Yes, absolutely, which is really interesting as well, because like you mentioned about mixture samples and mixture interpretation, which brings me to my other question, that is like, when you have so many, like hypothetically, if there's a gang rape and there are so many semen samples, so it's difficult for the analysts to separate it out, like separate the interpretation because of being a mixture. So according to you, is the biggest challenge in mixture interpretation that you've come across? Could there need more refinement as an analyst before it goes to like softwares like StarMix, Knockit, or any other software out there? Is that it does still rely on the analyst. So where do you see we could improve as a community?
So I StarMix and those probabilistic genotyping systems are a gigantic improvement, because if I now have a DNA profile with 24 polymorphisms and I have a DNA profile to compare to that mixture, I really don't want to do it manually.
Yeah,
software has much more information. It's much better at assessing artifacts and rare alleles versus frequent alleles. And I guess the problem is where to stop. I mean, at some point, a mixture is so complex that even you may get a positive association to a suspect, but it really doesn't mean anything because almost everybody is associated.
Right.
More than it's not you. More people could be associated. So adding those checks on could this still be fortuitous, and treating those high numbers carefully and not just marching into court and say, oh, we know he's in the mixture, but being very, very careful in your interpretation and maybe not even doing the calculation if it's too complex.
Right, exactly. Like setting a threshold, like you mentioned, is very important. I feel that now, like I'm doing my PhD, so when you get to work in the lab, you see that it's not only the likelihood ratio is affected by mixture samples, so the process which goes through, we lose a lot of information in the process, like even from going from the extract from one tube to another, you're losing a lot of DNA molecules from extraction to amplification, which might not be amplified. So you may lose some person in the process even before it gets into CEE, you get a CNO profile. Like the complexity of analyzing sample is so difficult, but hopefully we as a community could make it somehow better and like have good results as well as so I have one more question before it goes to Julianne. So my question is regarding like, have you helped students build up their research projects? Like, how do you as a person have the vision and the ideas to see that this part in forensic needs more improvement? Like, this is something we need to study. Like, how do we make this connection in your head to help us out as students? To what projects do we work on?
Oh, so you mean like how you determine what is a gap? What is a research?
Yes, exactly. What is the gap? Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, there are some resources for that because the community always publishes that. The National Institute of Justice, for example, has research needs posted on their website. The NIST, Organization of Scientific Area Committees, they developed some research needs, and they do. I feel since forensic science is an applied science, it should come out of the field. I mean, it shouldn't be something where I say, oh, I'm interested in the effect of luminol on lipstick traces. Yeah, okay. How often do you get a lipstick trace? I mean, so I would rather have a criminalist, a DNA analyst say, I really don't, like you said, I feel I'm losing some of my contact trace. Is there any way to how can I optimize my recovery? How can I improve my interpretation? How can I tell how many people are in the mixture? So, or right now, I mean, I know people are doing a lot of research on phenotyping,
yes,
where it's like, I'm being asked, what does the person look like, rather than what is their DNA profile, because
You're gonna have to describe phenotyping for the people at home, you know what I mean?
okay, so people at home, forensic DNA phenotyping is aiming at generating a mugshot based on DNA found at the crime scene. So right now, the genetic basis for pigmentation like skin, eye, and hair is very well known. So that's something that labs can already do. In the US, it's not, no, actually it is being used because some private companies use it. Public labs use it, if any, for skeletal remains, to add a description to a missing person. Because in an investigation, it's a bit of limited value adding those pigmentation markers, but it's the field has gone beyond that. People are studying height, the shape of your nose, the shape of your ears. The field is really pushing the boundaries there.
Right. So again, for the people at home, I know you guys heard genotype and may not know what that means. So genotype is more in a cellular level, kind of determining who you are by your genes, genotype. Phenotype is your physical characteristics, like you might see some like hair or skin color, nose. You might see some of these crime scene shows where they'll have like a sample of blood and they'll put it into an instrument and it'll come out with a whole face. And so that face will pretty much be the person's phenotype, which is, I don't want to say impossible, but I would just say very unlikely for that to happen.
Julian, there is a company called Parabon. They call it a snapshot. So they actually, on their website, they have a whole array of, this is our prediction, and then the police caught somebody and this is what she looked like.
Oh, wow.
And it's uncanny, but if you look at it, it seems as if it's a little bit of a generic picture they always generate.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
And so I don't know what, there are some ethical implications here, but I guess the idea is that rather than having an unreliable eyewitness who's saying, oh, I saw an Asian person running away, it would be better to have a DNA either confirm or falsify that eyewitness. That would help the investigator. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. So, Dr. Prinz, another question, of course. So what would you consider the ideal candidate, or what are the ideal qualifications for someone who's looking to enter that graduate forensics program?
Yes, so I'm sure it's similar to at PACE. We're looking for a pretty solid background in a natural science, because you cannot run a complicated instrument like a liquid chromatography, MS, or ATIR. I hope I don't have to explain that one too.
No, we'll have future episodes on
it. This is literally quantum chemistry. So to identify unknown substances at a crime scene, we're using spectral chemistry, and for DNA testing, we're using complicated biological mechanisms. So people coming into a crime lab need to understand what is going on, and people coming into a graduate program already have to have undergrad chemistry, undergrad biology, undergrad physics. I get so many requests from John Jay students that are in the criminal justice major there. Mm-hmm. And then I always have to tell them, no, you're not qualified. Forensic science is not about the investigation. Forensic science is about physical evidence. We're using natural science to analyze physical evidence to provide investigative leads or associate people to a crime scene or identify substances. So you need chemistry, biology, physics. In my experience, people have equally good success rates coming in with a chemistry major and a forensic science major. I mean, we have both. We have people coming in from forensic science undergraduate program and for natural science undergrad programs. Those are both good. And people have to have a knack for it. I mean, if you already struggled and you didn't like your chemistry class at the undergrad level, maybe continuing that in graduate school is not a good idea.
It would definitely be tough.
Yeah, you have to enjoy it because it's not that easy.
Oh, believe me, I know. Yeah. All right, so I did have another question again. So because of COVID and due to COVID, it kind of affected everything, like especially my last semester, in which I I had to do online because we weren't allowed on campus. And I had to tweak a couple things about my research project and with classes. So how do you feel that affected the kids who came in that next semester who had to start the program online or had to finish it, or like me, had to finish their whole last semester online? And I kind of think it was unfair to them because this class is like instrumental analysis. And for example, it's heavily based on instrumentation. So you're working with GCs, IRs, UV vis. We don't have to get into that now. That'll be in a different episode. And it's a lot of hands-on work. So how do you feel that those kids did or how they fared? And even in the theory, like the lecture part of the class, I feel like I wouldn't be able to get through that class if it wasn't for the help of like other students and kind of all of us banding together. So I know it had to be hard for them online. So how do you feel that they fared, I suppose? Yeah, like how do you feel that they fared in that regard?
So I do believe that the whole camaraderie and forming like learning groups and supporting each other, that suffered from everybody being online. But we did teach our labs in person in the fall of 2020 and the spring of 2021. We basically, we called it low density access. So most of the undergrad classes were all remote. And our graduate program, all the lectures were remote, but toxicology, crim, and instrumental, we had in person. And I'm happy because those are the most valuable experiences in the program. But the students that started in 2020 that cohort had more dropouts than I had seen before. And I do think that is caused by the fact that they didn't know anybody in the program. It's they were kind of disconnected. That's not a coincidence, I believe, that some people decided to leave because you got to get engaged and you got to buy into it. And it was hard if you start remotely and you don't form a group.
Yeah, because I knew a kid, a guy that he went to the same undergrad as I did, and we end up being in communication since we both came to John Jay for forensics, and we would talk a lot. And then he ended up telling me how when the whole COVID thing happened, he was really like stressed out and overwhelmed, and he didn't think it was for him. And like, you know, he kind of wanted to leave. And I was telling him like, bro, this program like is not easy. Like, I hope you didn't like come in to it with the mindset that it was going to be like, oh, just 2 years that you're going to knock out pretty easy. Like, it's a difficult program, but that's why you got people like me to help you. You got Dr. Prinz, all these people here who can help you with the process. And I was just trying to explain to him that it's not easy, but it's not impossible, especially for someone like me coming from a criminal justice background. And I felt like I was adept to science, but I still came from a criminal justice background. So my science those previous years were really at a minimal. and that a lot of people in the program, teachers and students, kind of held my hand through things that I may not have understood, and I really had to take baby steps, to be honest. And it wasn't easy. I had the same feeling, but hey, man, baby steps. So that's kind of what I conveyed to him, and he's still in it. So he's doing good. You just got to kind of buckle down, and it'll be worth it in the end. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to support students as much as possible. I mean, it's always sad if somebody struggles so much and they decide to drop out. We have sometimes somebody says, oh, I realize it's not for me. I want to be a biochemist. That happens too. But unfortunately, most of the people that leave either have a family obligations, which I feel is something that is, John Jay has what we call non-traditional students that come back to school after having worked for a while. So I feel we have more students that already have family and maybe even full-time jobs, and then it really can become too much.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but we try to support everybody as well as possible.
I have a question. So my question is, so is there any advice that you would like to give to new students coming in, or just graduated, and what should they expect from the field in general?
Oh, from the field or from the job?
From the job, like from the job.
Background checks. Don't forget about the background checks. You gotta stay clean. I've heard that the Albany State Police Laboratory rejects almost 50% of the applicants because they can't pass a lie detector test.
Oh,
so yeah, it's something people really need to know, that this is, it's not, I guess, it's a little bit weird, because when I was the lab director, we had that question, is like, we want to obviously, like, people with a prior conviction, does it mean they can't work in a crime lab? Yes and no. Obviously, everybody deserves a second chance, but then on the other hand, now you will have the problem that this person may be attacked in court, and this may be used against this witness to discredit this witness. And so it's who are you serving? So we decided against it, and it wasn't even a criminalist position. It was actually not whatchamacallit, like I think evidence technician or something like that position. But it was unfair to me, because I do believe people change or people make mistakes and they shouldn't be punished like that. But it raised too many red flags. So I mean, that is like the worst case scenario. But so everybody stay clean, stay on the honest side. You got to pass that lie detector test. I mean, not every agency does that. Some do, but every agency will do a background check.
Yeah, that is something really important to keep in mind. And thank you once again, Dr. Prinz, for your time and such valuable advice. I hope that people out there who are listening to the podcast learns more about the field from you and joins either John Jay or Pace or Rutgers. And please keep your thoughts clean. Yes. And again, any last piece of advice that you would have for students or anyone out there, Dr. Prinz? Otherwise, we'll just wrap it up.
No, I mean, I hope people find something that they really like and try to still have fun. I mean, it is demanding, and it's a lot of responsibility working on real cases, but it's very valuable. It's really very rewarding.
Thank you so much once again, and everyone out there. Please leave a comment below, and please do not forget to like
Share
and
and subscribe.
subscribe.
Oh, I'm so bad at that.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dr. Prinz, and we will see you guys next time. Peace out.
Peace, y'all.
Bye-bye.